A woman was convinced that her husband was having an affair with their maid. Determined to catch him in the act, she devised a clever trap. One evening, she sent the maid home for the weekend without informing her husband. That night, when it was time for bed, the husband approached her with the usual excuse. "Excuse me, my dear," he said, "my stomach aches." He then retreated to the bathroom, leaving her alone in the bedroom. Suspecting his usual routine, the wife quickly sprang into action. She dashed down the hall, slipped into the maid's bed, and turned off the lights to create the perfect ambush. Soon she heard footsteps approaching. Her heart raced as she felt someone climb into the bed beside her. After a few moments of what felt like passionate lovemaking, she decided it was time to reveal her trap. "I bet you didn't expect to find me here in this bed, did you?" she declared confidently. Suddenly, she flicked the light back on. To her astonishment, it wasn't her husband beside her, it was the gardener. "No, ma'am," he replied calmly. Two fishermen were out at sea, casting their lines and chatting about the latest gossip in town. The sun was shining brightly, and the gentle waves provided a soothing backdrop to their leisurely afternoon. Suddenly, one of the fishermen felt a strong tug on his line. His chair teetered dangerously close to the edge of the boat as he nearly lost his balance. He gripped the rod with all his might, his heart pounding with excitement. "I've got a big one!" he shouted, his voice a mix of thrill and strain. His friend leaned over, eyes wide with anticipation. The fisherman began to reel in with all the strength he could muster, the rod bending in a way that suggested he'd caught something extraordinary. Finally, with one last mighty heave, he pulled up his catch, and they both gasped in unison. Dangling from the hook was a mermaid. Above her shimmering tail was the most breathtaking girl they'd ever seen, with hair like spun gold and eyes as deep as the ocean. She gazed up at them, a blend of curiosity and gratitude in her expression, clearly just as surprised as they were by this unexpected turn of events. The fishermen were stunned, their jaws practically hitting the deck. They stared at her, unable to speak, their minds racing to process what they were seeing. Finally, the fisherman who had caught her broke the silence. "You know," he said slowly, rubbing his chin as if trying to solve a particularly tricky riddle, "we should really let her go." His fishing buddy, who had been too busy trying to figure out if he was hallucinating, snapped out of his daze and looked at him, puzzled. Why?" he asked, genuinely confused by the suggestion. The fisherman turned to his friend, his expression equally puzzled, and asked, how? He loved his job. Driving a train had been his dream ever since he was a child. He loved to make the train go as fast as possible. Unfortunately, one day he was a little too reckless and caused a crash. He made it out, but a single person died. Needless to say, he went to court over this incident. He was found guilty and was sentenced to death by electrocution. When the day of the execution came, he requested a single banana as his last meal. After eating the banana, he was strapped into the electric chair. The switch was thrown, sparks flew, and smoke filled the air, but nothing happened. The man was perfectly fine. At the time, there was an old Bulgarian law that said a failed execution was a sign of divine intervention, so the man was allowed to go free. Somehow, he managed to get his old job back, driving the train. Having not learned his lesson at all, he went right back to driving the train with reckless abandon. Once again, he caused a train to crash, this time killing 2 people. The trial went much the same as the first, resulting in a sentence of execution. For his final meal, the man requested 2 bananas. After eating the bananas, he was strapped into the electric chair. The switch was thrown, sparks flew, and smoke filled the room, and the man was once again unharmed. Well, this of course meant that he was free to go, and once again he somehow managed to get his old job back. To what should have been the surprise of no one, he crashed yet another train and killed 3 people, and so he once again found himself being sentenced to death. On the day of his execution, he requested his final meal, 3 bananas. "You know what?" said the executioner. "I've had it with you and your stupid bananas and walking out of here unharmed. I'm not giving you a thing to eat. We're strapping you in and doing this now." Well, it was against protocol, but the man was strapped into the electric chair without a last meal. The switch was pulled, sparks flew, and smoke filled the room, and the man was still unharmed. The executioner was speechless. The man looked at the executioner and said, "Oh, the bananas had nothing to do with it. I'm just a bad conductor."